Okay, continuing on. I'm going to get right back into this. Let's keep reading through this book, this future book, hopefully, that will make this happen. So here's where we are right now. Mason Norris Hess. I talked to him after Thanksgiving holiday about a big push with Gray State, or the real Gray State is what he called it, the real Gray State. Now that's very interesting, where you have David Crowley calling this the real Gray State, not just, the Gray State that we've been working on. No, he's talking about the real Gray State, which is apparently something completely different than what the Gray State was, as it's changing, as it's evolving, right? So let's keep reading on. So he asked me if I was in it till the end. We talked about working out and how great Kamel was for putting up with his dreams. See, and another thing, for putting up with him as if she was not a part of this whole thing, not a part of this. She was just putting up with it. And that's what he wants to make it sound like. She was just putting up with it. And let's see. And backing him on all he did and believe in. Yeah, she backed him up. This is so terrible and it doesn't make any sense. Again, that was pretty soon after these deaths. So in late November or early December of 2014, according to Hendricks, David was still planning a big push for the real Gray State with Kamel's support. None of that lined up with the official theory. There would be many contradictions to follow. The more contradictions I found in his statements, the more I kept asking myself, who is Mason Hendricks? And why is he so certain David is guilty just days after his body was found? Then we have the message between Hendricks and Dan Hinnon. We should look at some of the claims Hendricks made during the conversation. Then you can decide if you think he is a credible source of information. So let's go through some of that here. This is from 4/4/2015. Mason Hendricks commenting back and forth with Dan Hinnon. From time to time, I pop in and read the posts, and well, Joe Segura is the closest one to getting it. The reason no one talks or writes to any of you is because you won't believe the truth. And the truth is, David killed his family and himself. He was ID'd by his tattoos and DNA, and the same for Kamel. Palaio destroyed David's body. The case is closed as far as who did the murders, but is ongoing because of what the notes said, and there is more terabytes of video and files than you can imagine for the police to go through. You nor anyone will ever know what the notes said, which is complete and utter lies, because we know what the notes said. And here we have again the secret information, the Masonic logic to this, not the Masonic Lodge, but the Mason logic to this, the Freemason logic to this, the secret knowledge, sacred knowledge that they want to keep, to act like they know it, they got it all figured out. You don't understand it because you don't know it, and that's it. Well, we got the same knowledge that they had about this case, and we can clearly understand they're full of crap. David Crowley did not do this, and there is no evidence to prove that he did. It was his handwriting. I know your conspiracy theory side will not believe this, but he did do this. So again, he's constantly telling Dan Hinnon, David Crowley did this. Mason Hendricks wants Dan Hinnon desperately to believe David Crowley did this. And he thinks that if he just keeps repeating the same thing, that it's not insanity. Just repeating it, that somehow that will force people to believe that what he's saying is real. But the real question is, does he really believe what he's saying? That's a question that I have. It was his handwriting. So he's basing it all on the handwriting. The handwriting would not prove murder. The handwriting does not put the gun in David's hand. It just doesn't. It doesn't help any of the DNA evidence that shows why David is innocent. So if he's saying it is the handwriting, that makes absolutely no sense to me, at least. And the note. So you will never know what the note said. So it changes back and forth from notes to note. But here he's talking about, because he mentions handwriting in the next sentence, I believe he's talking about the handwritten note, not the note that is on the laptop, and not the what some may consider the note, the writing, the blood writing on the wall. Let me continue on here with what he is saying. I know your conspiracy theory side will not believe this, but he did do this. At some point, Danny Mason will release a statement pertaining to Gray State. Dan Crowley will not talk about this with people because he is sick of it. He is sick of people looking at him and seeing his brother who murdered his family. I'm giving you info so you can stop wasting time on this. I'm guessing you will be screenshotting this and posting what I wrote you. But if you want more information, you won't do that. So here again, it's the bargaining chips. And here again is the fishing expedition. I'm going to feed you information, but this is information for you, Dan. It's not information to be shared with other people. It's not information the public needs to know. And that doesn't sound like somebody who is trying to be transparent or somebody who is trying to be truthful about everything that is happening here, or even someone who is willing to admit that they might be wrong about their theory about David Crowley. This sounds like a narcissist, which again, Mason Hendricks has already said that he is a narcissist. He calls himself that. He does make the claim that David is a bigger narcissist than he is, but takes one to know one, I guess, is what he's saying. But this statement is one of the biggest eyebrow-raising statements for Mason Hendricks, and really does him in to show how shameful of a person this is, and how inaccurate he is and how his story does not line up with the evidence, does not line up with the DNA, the handwritten analysis. It doesn't line up with any of the conclusions that the police come to, other than David did it because they can't prove anybody else did. But it doesn't show, okay, the handwritten notes, or that because it was David's handwriting on that notepad, that somehow that proves David Crowley is guilty. It's very, very far-fetched. But it's another thing because he wants to make sure to say that you won't know what that note says. So that's where he goes. So let me jump right back into this. Okay, so the brother is a victim. He won't talk to anybody. He's sick of people looking at him. Hendricks wants to give Dan Hinnon the information, but if Dan Hinnon posts this and shares this, then Mason Hendricks won't give him more information. So what does that say again? So he says, you can paraphrase and say you talk to someone who knows him or whatever, but I'm over getting spammed with death threats and trash talking from people. So again, another victim mentality here. So even though Mason Hendricks is claiming he's getting death threats and trash talking from people, he still wants to make sure that he reaches out to Dan Hinnon to try to get Dan Hinnon to change course here, to try to get Dan Hinnon to and not say that, hey, this is what Mason Hendricks told me. This is what someone who knows David. And we hear that from other people, from other clowns who have fallen for this same trick. Like, oh, I spoke with somebody who knows David, and this is what they told me here. because they want the information. They want the dirt. They don't necessarily want the facts. They don't necessarily want to find out what happened. They want an open and shut case so they can move on to some other things too. Not really realizing that that type of mentality is not helping anyone. It's not helping anything. You're better off not even looking into it. If you just want to look at a bunch of different cases, solve them, have them figured out, and move on to the next one, you're not helping anybody, not even yourself. Not even yourself. So let's keep reading on here. It's an interesting statement that he's saying, and he's saying, um, but again, he's playing the victim here, but he still needs to reach out to Dan Hill for some reason. Because of all this, I have blocked over 300 people on Facebook because I'm sick of being messaged. I can only speak for myself and no one else. So here are a couple of details. David's fingerprints were on the gun. No, they weren't. David left a password list for the authorities, and David did try to kill the dog. Now, where's the evidence that David tried to kill the dog? So, this is where they go into misinformation, half truths, trying to put some of those things out there to make people think, hey, yeah, okay, maybe I don't believe everything he's saying, but he makes some good points here. He's got some of the stuff right. Yeah, David left a password, so maybe David did try to kill the dog. They're trying it's a brainwashing technique to try to get you to tie in both of these two things that have nothing to do with each other. There were passwords. David had written passwords left that the police took photos of. Anybody could have gotten those passwords. Anybody could have seen that. It has nothing to do with David trying to kill the dog. Where's the evidence that David tried to kill the dog? Now, Sidra, Kamel's sister, also said something similar, that David was shooting wildly at the dog or something like that. And I believe that's just what she was told too, not necessarily what she knows or anything that is backed up by facts. Now, we're just looking at what do the facts say. So by putting all of this stuff out there, everything that Mason Hendricks is doing is not helping people find the facts. It's actually muddying the waters. It's doing the complete opposite. It's throwing people off of the trail. I'm not saying it's purposely or it's not purposely. I don't know. I don't know what his motives are or why he would say this. Is he that dumb? Is he just repeating things that other people told him? Or is he purposely doing this? I can't say. Only he and God know for sure. But we know what he said here, and we know that this stuff is not true. And there's no evidence that David did try to kill the dog. Mason Hendricks goes on, and I'll just go back to read a little bit more. Mason Hendricks goes on to say, the back door that was ajar was open about a centimeter, but there was a door stop at the bottom that prevented from opening more. That is not true either. There was no door stop. There was absolutely no door stop. This just seems like another one of those lies here. And of course, I don't even know if I should be reading this whole thing just because the next few paragraphs are pretty much all about that. So he's saying there was a door stop here, and there were no footprints in the snow in the back of the house or deck. What police did say in their police reports, however, I should say, is that they did find animal tracking. They did find animal tracks. And I have heard separately that there may have been other tracks, other human tracks leading away, leading somewhere else. Not verifiable, but we do know that in the police reports, or at least in the documents that we have from the authorities, they found animal tracks in that backyard. So there are some prints there. I'm not saying it's, human. I mean, I'm just saying there were some other tracks there, but it's possible Mason Hendricks didn't even know about that too. So I believe it's possible he doesn't really know a lot of what he's talking about. He may just be speaking out of his ass. Who knows? So it says it happened between 9 a.m. and 11 Christmas Day morning, police believe. Now, again, what is this based on? This is the guy who is not mentioned in any police reports, but seems to know or seems to claim to know so much about the police and about the investigation, what the police think. He's trying to speak for them. And so it comes back to how much did this guy know, and where are the interviews with Mason Hendricks? Where are the police interviews with Mason Hendricks? Someone said they saw presence, but there was no presence. David left a note on his computer. Now, I think Mason Hendricks is talking about the presence inside, not outside. Obviously, we all know there were presence outside, but someone said they saw presence. I think he's talking about presence inside, which that the teapot, that big teapot that is found um, on the glass table in the living room does look like a present. We know that there were stockings that looked like were probably being taken down. There was wrapping paper found in the kitchen garbage. And any of those things, the lemur that was ripped to shreds all over the living room floor, that could have been a present, a Christmas present. So there is evidence that there were Christmas presents there inside of the house. We know for a fact that there were some outside of the house. But it's, we could argue with that, but I would say that there's some good evidence that there were some Christmas presents inside of the house too. We'll see. So let's see. David left a note on his computer that said to family, "I loved you all with my heart." It was a little different than what he says here, but we also know that that note on the computer was actually written on December 19th. It was written well before the bodies were found, or well before, if the police really believe David died on Christmas Day, or the murders happened on Christmas Day, it's well before that, too. Christmas Day would have been December 25th. If this was written, and we know based on the data that this was written, I forget if it was December 19th, December 18th, or December 19th, but "I have loved you all with all of my heart" was written in this note that was just conveniently there. Um, that is a big, big deal. We don't know who it was written for, what it was written for, why it was written for. We can speculate all day long and all summer long. But what we do know is what it says and what the date of it is, what the original date of it is. It was edited, yes. I think it was Hera, right? Was the title at the top. And so, again, he's trying to paint this story that is just not adding up. It's not matching up. And even his own story changes from his own mouth here, too. But as far as the letter or the written note, the note on the computer, it's really has, it doesn't have that much value once we realize when it was first written. Let's see. He says he took the password protection off of his computer, and that's another thing. He leaves a list of passwords for the authorities to find, but takes the password protection off of his computer to make sure that when they enter the house and they swab the computer, if they accidentally touch it or anything in both rooms, they both wake up. How convenient. This is not evidence of somebody going crazy. Those things are planned. I don't believe they were planned by David, but they have to be something that is planned. Just like editing a typed note on the notepad, on a digital notepad on your computer, those are planned things. These are things that have to be planned out. And the police know this. And I believe Mason Hendricks knows this too. So why is he saying what he's saying? And how much of this is what he truly, really thinks is true or not? I don't know. Body parts were all over the house. That's the other thing. Body parts were all over the house. Now, this is a big one. Body parts were all over the house. You've all seen those crime scene photos. You've all seen the same stuff that we've all seen. And do you see body parts all over the house? Of course not. Now, here we get into Ranya's body. The dog left Ranya's body alone. Well, if the dog left Ranya's body alone, then what happened to her arm? How did her rib get fractured if the dog left her body alone? You can see the lies, the misinformation, whatever you want to call it. This guy is full of shit. I don't know if he's purposely lying or if he is just full of shit and he doesn't know what he's talking about. Either way, this is not good. This is not helping the investigators and the investigation. It's doing the complete opposite. If the goal is to confuse, to create more conspiracy theories, Hendricks is doing a pretty good job. If the goal is to feed false information, Hendricks is doing a pretty good job. If the goal is to help people understand what really happened here, he's doing a very, very bad job. He should know better. He should know better. To say that body parts were all over the house is ridiculous. And then to say that the dog left Ranya's body alone is another thing that contradicts what the police reports say, because they credit Ranya's missing arm with the dog. Dog gets credit for all of that. And then there's rips in her clothing. There's weird things happening with her clothing. And so he discounts all of that, pretty much saying the dog didn't do any of that either. Well, then who did? Who did then? Somebody did. Didn't do it on its own. Something happened to her. Something happened to her clothing. Something happened to her arm. Who did that? If it wasn't the dog, who did it? And I'm asking you to not screenshot this. Fuck off. And I'm trusting you to please don't fuck me on this. I just realized the time and I have to go to work. Again, phrase this on your own. So this is what he sent to Dan Hannon. And he's really trying to feed Dan Hannon a line of bullshit. Dan Hannon ain't going to buy this. Nobody would buy this. I wouldn't buy that for $1. All right. So everything that you're going to read, everything that we're reading here is pretty much all just backing that up. It's all the same stuff. The same drama, same bat channel. So I will try to read. I will read it just because it's what's in the book. So even though I just pretty much probably paraphrased and probably just read it all. You nor anyone will ever know what the note said, Hendricks wrote to Dan Hannon. Thankfully, Hendricks was wrong again. But I thought it was a weird statement to make. Hendricks also claimed it was David's handwriting, but we know handwriting analysis was never done. So how can we know for sure? How can we know for sure? Just give me 1 second here. All right. Okay. How can we know for sure? Okay. Hendricks stated David's fingerprints were on the gun. That's not true. Hendricks claimed David left a password list for authorities. While David did have a password list on the office table, it's not clear if he left it for anyone. It's a password list. Why would Hendricks assume, or how would he know who David left this for? That's a big assumption. And is it necessary? Is it wise? No? The answer is no. Hendricks also believed David tried to kill the dog. That's just more speculation. Why would Hendricks say that? Why would Hendricks say that? Who was feeding him that information? So that's that. Let me just do a little editing there. Why would Hendricks say that? Who was feeding him that information? Hendricks claimed there was a door stop on the bottom of the rear slider that prevented the door from opening more. That was not true. It was another thing that just was not true. Oh, how many times is this guy just not going to be true? David's fingerprints were on the sliding door, Hendricks told Hennon. Yet that is not mentioned anywhere in the police reports or BCA documents. Hendricks stated police believe the murders happened between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Christmas morning. That's more speculation you won't find in the official documents. Who told Hendricks that? Hendricks stated David's fingerprints were on the computer. BCA results discount that statement. No one knows who wrote on the computer. Hendricks and others can only guess, but remember, your guess is as good as theirs. The claim that body parts were all over the house was a lie, according to official reports. The only body parts at the scene were found in the living room, according to official reports. The dog left Rania's body alone was another lie by Mason Hendricks. By that time, April 4th, 2015, Hendricks had to know about Rania's missing right arm, which was being blamed on the family dog, Paleo. I say Paleo, but it's Paleo. It is also strange that Hendricks did not want Dan Hennon to share the post quote for quote. Why not? Wouldn't that be more accurate than paraphrasing? Why would Hendricks make these accusations and then not stand by his word? I do not condone anyone contacting Mason Hendricks with death threats, but I must question if that was real too. As far as the trash talking he received, what did Hendricks expect to happen after spreading so much speculation, misinformation, and disinformation? While chastising many of us who question the official theory, Hendricks and others were creating, supporting, and spreading a narrative that was not based on facts. I noted all his accusations, hoping for the chance to converse with Hendricks myself. I didn't have to wait long. I spoke with Mason Hendricks several times on the phone until I realized he was not being honest with me. Here are some of the notes from the conversations. And I am really strongly considering actually putting, as part of this book, at the end or somewhere, there we go. Somewhere in this book, I am really thinking about putting the whole conversation, all the text messages back and forth, right in there for everyone to see and decide for themselves what they think is true, what they think is not true. We'll see. We'll see how that works out. All right. Getting back into this. In the beginning, a core group of 6 or 7 people were working on the Gray State project, according to Mason Hendricks. Dan Crowley Jr. worked on the film with David, but Hendricks felt the two brothers could not work together because of how controlling and egotistical David was. Hendricks called himself a narcissist, but claimed David was too, but David was worse, according to Hendricks. Mason Hendricks met Danny Mason during a bullet exchange weapon training session. Danny Mason had pretty much no idea what he was doing, Hendricks told me over the phone. Hendricks stated Danny Mason got butthurt when he made the actor look like an ass. Basically, Hendricks was saying Danny Mason didn't know anything about guns. At some point in their relationship, Hendricks found out he and David had a mutual friend in Sean Wright. After David's death, according to Mason Hendricks, Sean found out the hard way it's illegal to not file your income taxes in the state of Minnesota, and now is paying lots and lots of fiat currency based dollars back to the state of Minnesota. David was so protective of Kamel, said Hendricks, and I would always fuck with him. Hendricks jokingly told David if he ever got sick of Kamel, he would gladly step in and take his place. Hendricks also joked around with Kamel about a possible relationship. Kamel, are you sick of David yet? Hendricks asked. Are you sick of this scrawny little man? Whenever you want to hang out with a real man, Kamel, you let me know. Hendricks was always messing around with David like that. Kamel would laugh, and they would hug. It was all in good fun. Regarding the bodies of David, Kamel, and Rania, and because of what the dog did, Hendricks stated nobody actually knows how they were laid out. Hendricks believed David was controlling Kamel and became a domestic abuser, but not a physical abuser. So more of a verbal abuser, but they don't say verbally, he verbally abused her. It's all he's a domestic abuser, right? Sounds better when you're trying to blame David Crowley for these deaths. Before we got two versions of David Crowley's Gray State script, I asked Mason Hendricks how the story ended. Hendricks first told me how the movie began. It starts out as somewhere overseas. I just want to break in here just for 1 second here because these scripts, Mason Hendricks was telling me his version of what these scripts are. So we have the two scripts, so we can always compare and see what is accurate and what is inaccurate. So he says it starts out somewhere overseas, which is true with the 2013. I think the 2014 script, maybe. I'd have to go back and see. The viewer is instantly thrown into the script with little character development or background information given. An angry female FBI agent was to play a huge role in the last version of Gray State. Hendricks also claimed David wanted to add more of a spiritual element to Gray State, basically taking stuff from all sorts of different religions. All of us thought that was really stupid, said Hendricks, because you basically would be deleting a gigantic base of your core. And then you're also creating a story that is so fucking large that there's no way in hell you'd be able to do it in a movie, which then led to the talks and the ideas of possibly doing it like a miniseries. So, I mean, to me, this sounds more like the 2013 script that Danny August Mason was part of, not so much like David's final version. So, take that for what it's worth. According to Mason Hendricks, it was David Kirk West who was responsible for getting Crowley to return to the original Gray State storyline. Now, remember, David Kirk West is another one who David would end up distancing himself from. So it sounds like these guys are all part of that 2013 script. This is the one that they're seeing. The 2014 script, the one that David Crowley eventually ends up selling to Michael Entertainment Group. I don't know how much these guys really know about that script. It's hard to say, but based on what Mason Hendricks is saying here, it doesn't sound like we're talking about the same script here. It doesn't sound like we're talking about the 2014 script that David Crowley sold to the Mikes. Could be. Just doesn't sound like it to me. It sounds closer to the 2013 script that Danny August Mason was still a part of. which is more spiritual and more out there and more in line. If you look at the ending of that 2013 script, it does seem like it sets up more of a mini series and video games. It sets up things, whereas the 2014 script has more of a conclusion, not a definite conclusion. Obviously, you always want to leave any good writer wants to leave the door open for future projects. Alrighty, let's see. According to Mason Henry, blah blah blah. Hendricks also had some interesting comments about David Crowley's father. David's dad might own or be a part of an excess of 20 some patents, Hendricks told me over the phone. Hendricks described David's dad as humble and one of the most brilliant people you could ever meet. If you know what sputtering is, Hendricks continued, part of the reason why your lovely iPhone is so strong is because of technology that he created, like with how the glass no longer shatters and all these other things. He's done very, very well for himself. He started from a garage, creating his own little trinkets, and now his products are the most innovative in the realms of glass tampering and a whole lot of other things in the world. And his patents are all sought after. One of the last Facebook comments made by David was on a post created by Mason Hendricks. Hendricks stated the post was about the myths of Christmas. Hendricks also told me David's footprints were a match for the prints found on the kitchen floor. I could not find that information in the police reports or in any of the BCA reports, documents, or notes. Why? Because, like many things Mason Hendricks told me, that allegation simply was not true. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. We're going to come back next time and we are going to go over the fair trade with Danny Mason. That should be fun. But that's all of the Mason Hendricks stuff that I put in here. Again, I have a 70, 80 page document that I could put at the end of the book in the sources to just show all of the stuff that all the back and forth. But these were some of the highlights. Really, no, these aren't really the highlights. These are from the phone conversations. I don't know how much I really included here from the text messages. All right. Until next time, God bless you all and have a great night.